Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. The RSPCA bans the use of electric collars for dairy cattle in its Assured brand products.
We know they're a negative experience for animals, and compared to, for example, a solid fence, there's no visual cue for the cattle using these collars that shock is about to come.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, all this week we're talking about starting out in farming. Rodrigo Navarro is a former chef and new entrant farmer in Hampshire. Last May he took on the challenge of starting free-range egg production just before bird flu hit. His flock is now housed in special securely netted systems next to their sheds. He started as part of the pitch-up scheme, which matches newcomers with large landowners or estates. Nina Pullman has been to visit.
So these are the nesting boxes, right?
These are the nesting boxes.
There's loads of eggs.
Yes. So actually I think this is 2 days worth of eggs because I didn't collect yesterday. So my name is Rodrigo Navarro, and together with my wife Kirsten we set up Wandering Feathers here at Kingsley Estates. Thanks to their pitch up scheme we managed to get on this farm and start our egg business.
How did you get into it?
My wife and I, we both lived in London, and my wife's been a teacher most of her life, and I've been a chef most of my life. I still work as a chef on the weekends, but we decided we wanted to move out of London and get into sort of agriculture, and move into the countryside, but not just move into a village and still work in London or from home. We wanted to actually be active parts of an agricultural system. So I started studying a college called Capel Manor, which is one of the only ones that actually offered agriculture at the time, in London especially. I did that, and through a work experience I met Tim, who runs Kingsley Estates here. He said, we've got this sort of scheme called Pitch Up. People come up to the farm with ideas for a business that could work on the farm, and if it works out, you become a partner with the farm. So the chicken business is my own, but we share the capital investment into starting up. So we both own half the chickens. He owns the sheds because they already had those. I own all the branding and different bits and bobs, so we sort of shared the risk. Yeah, it's really good. It's quite different here.
Yeah, I mean, we're on the top of a hill looking out over amazing green countryside. How different is it to your former life?
I'd say just understanding how the seasons affect the animals or just the farm. Those things that you don't really see in a city, the seasons, whereas here it affects everything. How much grass grows, how the birds lay less in the winter because there's less daylight, it's colder.
What happens now then? Are they getting ready for bed?
You can see them crawling up the little ladder on the side there because it's getting dark and they're getting ready for bed and getting cosy. Some of them are still out. I'll move the tractor around the side just to put a light on, and then we can do a bit of egg collecting.
And where do your eggs go at the moment then?
I'd say most of our eggs go to gyms actually. So we used to do a decent bit of CrossFit when we were in London. So we had quite a few friends there, and we said, look, they already thought we're a bit mad but really excited for us to do this. So the way it works now is we have, I think, maybe 5 gyms where we show up once a week and drop off about 300 eggs on trays of 30, empty egg boxes and a little poster with QR codes on it. That's been the best way for us to sell eggs because it's less labour. We don't have to actually deliver eggs to people, and they just collect eggs on their way out or pre-order, and it's been really good for us. What else? We have a vending machine on the farm, which people love. That gets really busy on the weekends.
Do you think it's a good way to help people get into farming?
Definitely, I think so, because unless you have land or have access to land, I mean, even a farm tenancy is very hard to come by these days. It's very difficult to get into farming at all, which is such a shame because there's such a massive need for more farmers and more small farmers, especially small businesses, innovative businesses. But to go from working as a chef in London and saying, oh, I really want to farm, it's like, well, where the hell do I go from here? So for us, it was a dream for a long time. We were listening to Farming Today, we're listening to all these podcasts, trying to learn as much as you can, but there's only so much learning you can do until you actually just start doing it. And it was that sort of getting to start doing it which was quite difficult. So really we got quite lucky to find Pitch Up, and it's not just a payment to a landlord at the end of the month or at the end of the year. It's building up a business, building up a community, better for the dairy farm, better for everyone, I think.
Do you see yourself in farming long term now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we sort of lifted everything we had in London, moved over here and restarted essentially, so we've put all our eggs in this basket.
Well said there, Rodrigo Navarro, new egg farmer in Hampshire. One of the perennial challenges for anyone owning woodland is grey squirrels. They cause damage to trees, which can kill them off, and they spread squirrel pox disease, which threatens protective native red squirrel populations. The government's just issued a policy statement updating its grey squirrel action plan for England, which started 12 years ago. It includes financial incentives and advice to help landowners take action, and it encourages a more collaborative approach to control numbers. Dr. Callie Ham is an ecologist with Forest Research, the research agency of the Forestry Commission.
There's an estimate from 2021 that the economic cost of grey squirrels across England and Wales is £37 million a year, and that's due to the loss of timber, reduction in carbon sequestration, and the cost of squirrel control itself. They can quite easily outcompete our native red squirrel. They strip bark from our trees, so predominantly from broadleaf trees, including oak and beech. As grey squirrels strip bark from the trees, that not only reduces your tree growth, but it also deforms the stems. Because landowners, land managers know that grey squirrels are a problem, they are very much becoming disincentivised to plant the species that they know are likely to be hammered by grey squirrels.
This problem has been here for decades. What's been tried so far to control them, and have any of them worked?
Yeah, so the real problem we have with grey squirrels and bark stripping is we don't know why they do the behaviour. So they don't bark strip in the native range in the USA, and nor do they bark strip really in northern Italy, which is the other main introduced population. So the only tool that we have is to reduce grey squirrel population, because we can't target the behaviour itself. So currently that is based on lethal control, either by shooting or by trapping. There's a lot of work underway to develop a contraceptive which can be delivered orally. And the other thing that is ongoing and that I think will continue to increase is allowing potential grey squirrel predators, so goshawk and pine marten mainly, to establish in our woodlands. In Ireland, that's been shown to quite nicely reduce the grey squirrel population, so potentially the same could be true in England as well.
Well, part of this new plan is to encourage landowners to take greater action, and there could be financial incentives to help them do that and advice.
The other key thing for grey squirrel control is that it needs to be at landscape scale. That's absolutely critical. They're very mobile creatures, so as soon as an area of woodland becomes empty of grey squirrels after some population management, those in the neighbouring woodlands are just going to hop over and fill up that empty space. We definitely need a landscape scale approach to this, and a joined up way of communicating and sharing resources.
Dr. Callie Ham from Forest Research. The RSPCA is updating its welfare standards for dairy cattle under its RSPCA Assured scheme. The changes come into operation this April and include more access to pasture, a minimum of 120 days a year, changes to rules around transport of pregnant cows, and use of RSPCA Assured slaughterhouses. The changes also mean that electronic collars, which are used instead of fencing, will be banned under the scheme. Sam Sandberg farms near Chipping Norton in Oxfordshire and uses them on her cattle.
If they approach the boundary, they can hear a tune that they associate with "don't go any further." This is enabling me to graze lots of areas that haven't been fenced, or one can't afford to fence, or you simply don't want to fence. Not only can you strip graze within a field, but you can graze these sort of little pockets that just wouldn't be worth you grazing otherwise. It wouldn't be worth you setting up a fence for.
Farmer Sam Sandberg. Well, Charlotte Smith asked Dr. Holly Gower, Senior Scientific and Policy Officer for the RSPCA, why they're bringing the ban in.
So we've been looking at virtual fencing and the research and evidence around this. And it's something that we have some concerns about. So, for example, the use of electric shock collars has some ethical problems associated with it. We know they're a negative experience for animals. And compared to, for example, a solid fence, there's no visual cue for the cattle using these collars that shock is about to come. They do have some audio cues associated with them, but not that sort of visual evidence that there would be for a solid fence line.
Is it the shock element of this that is the issue? If they were just collars that then, if the cattle went over the line, as it were, there would be a noise to make them turn around, would that be okay?
Yeah, exactly that. So one of the areas that we'd like to see explored is sort of alternatives to this that are less negative for cattle, or ideally positive. We don't know what that looks like. Obviously, that would be an area for research, but we'd love to see that explored to move away from that negative stimulus of the electric shock. There's also an element with the electric shocks that if cattle pass over a boundary, so for example, if they were being chased by a dog and they exit that edge of where the virtual fencing says they can go, for some systems, they will then receive further shocks beyond that boundary. So you can imagine for an animal being chased by a dog, for example, they might receive, for some systems, up to 3 electric shocks in a row as they aim to escape. And it's a multiple shock that they would be receiving.
Although lots of people who use these say that the cattle go to the edge, they get an electric shock and they never ever do it again. So it's a very limited shock.
Yeah, the research out there, it does show some mixed effects, as you say. So there are cattle that are faster learners on this, and there are some that take that bit of time to sort of work out that association with the audio cue and the electric shock. And of course, for all cattle, they are going to have to go through that training period of learning that noise means that something unpleasant is about to happen. Predominantly, the standard that we've changed refers to commercial systems, so where people are commercially farming dairy cattle, unlike some of the systems that we might see this sort of technology employed in, for example, conservation grazing. So for our commercial dairy cattle, where they're perhaps being in a rotational grazing system in smaller areas, you might have sort of 3 or 4 of those boundaries with the virtual fencing rather than anything solid. So there's sort of multiple boundaries for them to learn in potentially quite a small area, which is obviously a lot more problematic than perhaps a large diffuse area where cattle are roaming acres and acres in a conservation setting. So although we are against virtual fencing in a commercial setting, we are taking that balanced view of there are settings where we can see the value of it more than others. And for us, it always has to be, is the balance of welfare positive or is it negative? And for commercial settings, we feel that the factors that I've just discussed make this a more negative experience than a positive one for cattle.
Isn't that a bit hypocritical? Because if cattle are conservation grazing and they get a shock, the animal welfare effect is exactly the same as if they're in a commercial setting.
Yeah, of course, a shock is a shock, you're quite right. But it's sort of that overall picture that we're trying to look at. So in a conservation setting, for example, where this system may be being used to prevent cattle accessing something that would be much more severely negative to them, a crumbling cliff edge or a highly marshy, boggy area where they're likely to get stuck or entangled in something, for example. So it's that balance of harms versus positives. Obviously, the electric shock element is still something for all settings we'd like to see moved away from. But if you look at the whole experience of that individual animal wearing the collar in that setting, there are some farmed or conservation settings where there are more likely to be more positives, i.e. an animal is being kept from much more significant harm in some more dangerous areas of grazing.
That was Dr. Holly Gower talking to Charlotte Smith. Well, if that interests you and you've got something to say about it, or you have comments about anything else in our programme, you can contact us by email. It's farming.today@bbc.co.uk. That's all from us this morning. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.